Hey y'all, how you doing? This is Father Larry Young. You know I started a YouTube channel a couple months ago. I've posted 24 videos. Some people are watching these things, however, and they don't know me. They're probably wondering, who the heck is Father Larry? So I'm going to take a little time in this video to just explain something of my background, where I'm from, and how I wound up becoming a Catholic priest. All right, let's see how long it takes you to figure out what state I'm from. It's famous for three things. Number one, there's no sales tax. Number two, we were the first ones to sign the Declaration of Independence. And number three, it's the second smallest state. Ever met anybody from Delaware? Well, I'm from Newark, Delaware. Don't say Newark, okay? That's New Jersey. It's an A, not an E. Newark, Delaware. I grew up in a devout Catholic home of 7 kids, boy. I'm the youngest. My mom, she was a cradle Catholic. She would come upstairs and say bedtime prayers with us every night, no matter how tired she was with all those kids. If she was late for some reason, we would call out, "Mom, can you come up and say prayers?" And we were relentless until we heard that familiar shuffle up the stairs. Parents and future parents, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of bedtime prayers with your children for their spiritual growth and development. My dad was a convert, and man, did he love the Catholic faith. He had that convert zeal. I mean, it was contagious. He would go to daily mass, and he invested countless hours teaching me the faith in the home. I can't think of one time growing up that we ever neglected out of laxity going to mass on Sunday. It was total chaos with 7 kids, cats, dogs, rabbits running around. Took 2 cars to get there. We were always late at the last conceivable mass, but we never missed. Something that could easily get overlooked in a family is grace at meals. We always said grace at dinner time as a family, and even if I didn't understand what we were saying half the time, "Bless the Lord, these thy gifts are about to receive, not by Christ the Lord, amen." For years I wondered what these thy gifts was. What's these thy gifts? These thy gifts. Eventually I figured it out. Don't underestimate the importance of that momentary acknowledgement of the existence of Almighty God and His providential care for us. Hugely important for your family's life of faith. So what was it like for little Father Larry growing up in Delaware? Well, I always went to public school. My older siblings got to go to Catholic school, but I guess my parents were out of money by the time I came along. My dad had been a Navy pilot for 10 years. Met my mom on a blind date. They got married and started having kids. My dad had never finished his college degree, so he grabbed a sales job to make ends meet. That kind of took him down a path where we managed to get by financially with all those kids, but we never prospered financially, but we made ends meet and did just fine. But we were kind of, us kids, poor and didn't know it. Anybody else grow up like that? We didn't have air conditioning in our house or in our beat up cars. We hung our clothes on a line. We drank powdered milk. We had a little rinky-dink TV with 2 or 3 channels. There were no computers then. There were no video games. Atari, some of my friends got Atari, with asteroids, and Pong was about the best out at the time. So we played outside. I would play outdoors all day long and read a lot as a kid. My parents were both big readers, and my mom would take us to the library all the time, so I enjoyed that. And I played a lot of sports. Played baseball growing up. Wrestling was my main sport in high school, and then in college I played some lacrosse and ultimate frisbee. My first job was the Pep Boys parts counter in high school, which was a natural fit because my dad loved working on cars, and we always had these cars that would break down, and my dad refused to take them to a mechanic unless he was desperate, so we would try to fix them ourselves, and all us kids got real good at holding the light for my dad. My first car was a 72 Ford Maverick. So overall, I'd say I enjoyed my growing up experience except for school, I never enjoyed too much, to be honest with you, but I would learn to love it later on. So in 1987, I graduated high school and everybody's like, pew, pew, pew. Everybody seems to know what they're doing. I was left in the dust. I'm like, I just wasn't sure what to do. So I decided to just work for a while, and I wanted to have an adventure. So I decided to go on this outdoor survival school in Minnesota called Outward Bound. Took a bus all the way there. It was 22 days, and we canoed 200 miles through the Boundary Waters, kayaked and rock climbed. The big highlight of the thing was a 3-day solo where you just sit by yourself in the woods with no food, nothing, for 3 days and 3 nights. Unfortunately, it was cut short because one of the students in my brigade, there were 7 of us, got mauled by a bear. And he and I were the last 2 guys to get dropped off on our solo. And we both wanted this spot with a rock in the water around the perimeter of this lake. So we rock, paper, scissored, and we tied twice, and then I won. Got my stuff and got out, and he got taken to this other spot, and the next day he was mauled by a black bear. First time a black bear ever attacked somebody unprovoked in the Boundary Waters. So I'm going to put the underneath here, I'll post the after action ranger report of the 1987 bear attack. So that was a pretty significant experience. So eventually I went to the University of Delaware part-time at first, then I went full-time. I declared a geology major and lived in the dorms in a co-ed dorm and had all that whole experience. The summer of 1989, I lived in a beach house with my friends, half a block from the ocean, and it was one continuous party. Now, halfway through that summer, I was so sick of the party scene, I was torn in two because I was a man of God. I was always going to confession and mass, and I could not live this duplicitous life anymore. At the end of that summer, I said a prayer on my knees in my room in front of a candle and invited God into my life. I swung the doors of my heart wide open this time. Instead of always kind of keeping them partially shut, I liked it a little bit open, but I was afraid. This time I pushed all my chips into the middle of the table and said, Lord, I'm all in. Something happened to me at that moment, and I was different from that day forward. I finally responded to my baptismal grace, but it was unleashed in my soul. And I can't tell you the feeling of the exhilaration of the inrush of the Spirit of God. And whatever happened to me is still happening to me, because I can still sense and feel whatever it was that I kickstarted when I said that prayer in 1989, almost 30 years ago. So after this conversion experience in 1989, I went into the carpentry trade, remodeling houses, saved up some money, and decided to fulfill a dream to hike the entire Appalachian Trail from Georgia to Maine. So I completed this hike in 1990. It took me 6 months to walk the 2,166 miles through 14 states. But this experience of soaking in God's creation for all that time was healing and cleansing for me at that stage in my life. An incredibly formative experience for me. When I got back, I went back into the carpentry trade, remodeling houses. Then I went to Franciscan University of Steubenville, Ohio, which I can't say enough good about. I got a philosophy degree and a theology minor. I got to study in Austria for a semester. I made the best friends. I had such an awesome experience soaking in that incredible, robust faith environment. Love Steubenville. Now, I dated a girl there for 1.5 years that I cared for very much and was thinking about marrying. But she had 2 more years to finish her degree, and I had graduated, and we decided to break up. So it took a while to get that out of my system. I moved in with my sister in the DC area and her family, and I jumped back into the carpentry trade full bore, bought a truck, started buying tools with every paycheck, and was starting to do my own work and build up energy towards starting my own business. But when I got this girl out of my system, I felt the priesthood come back strong that had persisted throughout my whole life since when I was a little kid. It would always resurface in my heart. And I thought, now is the time. I feel like it's the ripe moment to enter the seminary. I was 27 years old in 1997, and I entered, and I went to Rome for a year, Denver for 2 years, 3 years at Catholic University in Washington, D.C., and was ordained in 2003. I've been a priest for 15 years and served in 5 different parishes, 2 as an associate pastor and 3 as pastor. And interestingly, around the time that I entered the seminary, I come to find out later that the girl I had dated entered the convent and she became a nun and still is to this day. So anyway, that's my story, and that brings us up to the present. What I'd like to do now is just share a few pics as a little add-on. So I hope you enjoy. There's my dad. Pretty strong resemblance, I'd say. And here's my parents on their wedding day. This is my baptism, and that nun placed me on the altar, said a prayer that if I had a vocation to the priesthood, that I would have the grace to respond. It's my parents. I don't know what year that is. This is out in front of my house with my next door neighbor playing. And it's my backyard with my buddy Kip up the street. My favorite after school activity was always dodgeball. I played 1 year of football, but my primary sport was wrestling. And I played a little lacrosse in college and summer leagues. That was my 72 Ford Maverick crazy ski trip I took up to Vermont with a buddy. And that's on the Appalachian Trail somewhere in New York. And that's the AT as well in Maine, I believe. That's a bird I actually got to land on my head with peanuts. That's me standing on my truck ladder racks. That's my dog I grew up with, Maggie. My brothers and I, that's a recent photo. Celebrating a mass on a mountain in Wyoming. Hey, thanks for letting me share a little bit of my story with y'all. God bless you.